Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last week, we got to speak with Jay Silverman from Jay Silverman Productions, who recently just directed a film and released called Camera. If you haven't had a chance to check out that movie, please do. And if you didn't get a chance to listen in on the episode, definitely check it out. It was a fascinating conversation that I got to have with him. And Jay, thanks again for being on the show. I am so happy that I got a chance to talk to you. This week, I am really excited for our guest, Lenora Edwards from Better Speech on the show today. Lenora is an ASHA board-certified speech pathologist with a company called Better Speech, and she has enjoyed treating and evaluating a wide variety of speech and language issues across the lifespan. So thank you again, Lenora, for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Nikki. I'm so excited to spend time with you again.
I know, I am too. And I'm so happy for some of the conversations that we've already had, and that's partially why I was so excited to have you on the show today. I just kind of want to jump right in. Why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners today a little bit about your background and what led you to become a board-certified, speech-language pathologist?
A little bit about me is I have been a speech-language pathologist since 2009. I actually started out in nursing, and I absolutely love nurses, and it's a fantastic field. It just wasn't my field. And I started out in that way, and then I directed while I was an undergrad to speech-language pathology and went on to graduate school, and I have been working as a speech pathologist ever since. And one of the kids that I used to babysit for, I loved babysitting growing up, and that was a great way that I earned money. And one of the little girls that I worked with, she was what you would consider nonverbal, and she was also neurodivergent. And her speech pathologist would come on Saturday mornings to the house, and her speech therapist would work with this little girl, and she would also teach the family and me while I was there. And it was just a fantastic experience to be a part of that and then to watch her become more verbal over time.
Yeah, and that's what did it for you then, huh? You knew that was going to be your pathway. Yeah.
I loved working with her. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, how old was she?
She was 8 at the time, 6, 7, 8. I started out as her lifeguard at the local Y. And then we got along so well, I became their babysitter. So.
Oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
I know you talked a little bit we've talked in our previous conversations about Better Speech and what you guys all do there, but why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners today a little bit about it? Because this is, I was so excited to be able to talk about this on the show because I think you guys offer such a valuable service and experience.
Thank you so much. I love to hear that. We are a wide group of speech-language pathologists, and we offer high-quality speech therapy services all across the world. And it's all from the comfort of your own home, which I think is a great thing, especially in how busy things have gotten. Online speech therapy is completely effective as long as it's a right fit for that individual that is receiving the speech therapy services. And it has been such an honor and a privilege to work with people all over the world. I live in Pennsylvania. I have clients in Washington and in California and in Texas who aren't able to receive outpatient speech therapy services or prefer online speech therapy services because of their lifestyle, and it's been great.
Oh, that's so amazing. And so do you guys offer kind of, so are you insurance-based, cash pay? Like, how does that work for you guys at Better Speech in terms of intaking that structure for clients?
That's a great question. We pride ourselves on being the most affordable and convenient and effective speech therapy services online. So we're a group of over 150 speech pathologists.
Oh, wow.
And people opt in to our speech therapy services, and we can provide them with a super bill. In some cases, we do work with insurance companies, but we provide them with a super bill, and that is the official documentation that the insurance company requires for their ICD-10 codes and their CPT codes. And that way, speech therapy services can be covered wherever that individual may have insurance.
Oh, that's awesome. And it sounds like you offer just really affordable options, like you said, for cash pay if insurance is, because that's something that we had to battle too. Like initially years ago when Drayson was diagnosed, speech was not covered on our insurance.
Yeah.
It is now, but there's only, we only get so many visits a year too. So
Definitely.
that can be limiting as well.
Very much so. And then if you think about the cost to drive there, and then if
Yes.
it's an outpatient clinic, they have a different level of requirement. For example, they have to pay to keep the lights on. They have to pay for the plumbing. They have to pay for the
Right.
gas, all to keep that building open. Whereas online speech therapy, we don't have that same overhead.
Okay.
We don't have a physical place. The physical place is where you live. And
Right.
that's a great thing. So as long as you have a steady internet stream, we are in good shape.
Right. And I think too, it also matters for parents because same thing, the time that we have to take our kids to those sessions. I know, we drive Drayson all over the place for certain therapies and, I literally sometimes have my laptop with me. I'm working in the lobby while he's in session because I'm just trying to get everything done in a day. So I love the fact that you guys give a virtual option. And
it makes a huge difference. I agree with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, from your experience, what are some common communication challenges that you've noticed with, specifically with children that have autism?
One common one is, all right, I know there's lots of different common ones, but one in particular, especially as that little one is developing, parents often come to us and they're like, my child's not talking. I don't know what's wrong. And the first thing that I share with these parents and these guardians is that they didn't do anything wrong. Because a lot of the time they feel very judged and they're very hurt that they think something is wrong with their child and that they did something wrong with their child. So truly,
Right.
I invite them to really understand nobody's wrong and nobody's in trouble and to really take that to heart. And if an individual is experiencing signs and symptoms of autism or neurodivergency where they are not officially diagnosed, it is something where we often encourage people to look at the possibilities, but also look at the skill sets of where they are. Just because their language isn't there doesn't mean that they may be autistic, but just because their verbal skills aren't there doesn't mean that they'll never talk either. So it really is a process of helping people understand there's a massive gap on language and expressive language and how those skills develop over time, but also if an individual isn't quite talking at 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 years old, it's not a seal the deal that they'll never talk. It's how can we get them to communicate effectively? What is most functional and the best way that we can support that individual? So really helping people understand that when somebody is expressing their wants and their needs, verbal is a possibility, but also using pictures or finding other ways to communicate using devices. Technology has gone so far these last couple of years. Oh my gosh. We have so many options, so more than we've ever had before. So let's work together to figure out what's best for that individual and keep supporting that development if verbal skills are their intention.
Right. Yeah. And I was initially told that when Drayson was diagnosed at 3, he wasn't speaking very much. And we knew around 2 that there was some stuff going on. And I remember that that's kind of what they said within the diagnosis. Well, he might talk, he might not talk. He might call you mom, he might not ever call you mom, and I've talked about it in previous episodes here on my show that's when my moment of belief really started with Drayson, because the first 6 months after we kind of started delving into therapies and doing some things for him, he finally called me mom. And I knew that was my moment of belief where I knew he was capable, and I wanted to keep going. And I think that's, if I had just accepted at face value what she was saying and didn't push, I don't know if his verbal would have been cultivated. Does that make sense?
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I often encourage, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Go ahead. You often encourage.
I often encourage other professionals to be encouraging, be hopeful.
Yeah.
Just because you might have seen other things in the past doesn't take away anything from this child. Look at the individual in front of you and be optimistic, because what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to be optimistic. But also, as the professional, I want you to know and feel empowered
Yeah.
that you can help your child.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
the most important thing, is that you know for sure you can help your child.
Yes.
And then your belief in yourself also supports your child's growth. That's
Yes.
pivotal.
Yeah.
Truly makes a huge difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And once I got past kind of the guilt and shame phase, right? Because I think that's normal for every parent to kind of feel that way. I started to notice things a little differently, even how I connected and communicated with him. And that's, it wasn't just the verbal anymore. It was connecting, trying to figure out ways to connect with him differently, And so I guess my question to you, though, in regard to that is, how can parents better connect and communicate with their children who have autism?
I love that you shared that about your own experience, because shame
Yeah.
and guilt are such heavy, heavy, heavy emotions. And they disconnect us from the emotion of love and from the emotion of support.
Yes.
When we can move beyond that and truly stay present and say, you know what? I know for sure I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not a bad person. This does not make me a bad parent. This does not make me a bad guardian. I know for sure I want to help my child.
Mm-hmm.
I love them. I love them
Yeah.
more than anything. When you can tune into that and take it forward, and quite literally a day at a time,
Mm-hmm.
we have no idea what the future is going to hold. We have no idea what it's going to look like in 5 years. But if you can show up today and say, I'm going to do my best because I love my child and I
Yeah.
love caring for them, and I love that I get to see them smile and I get to hear them giggle. That shift in your energy, in your heart, in your mind, in your spirit makes all the difference,
Mm-hmm.
because then you're connecting with them, especially for individuals who can't say, hey, you're in a bad mood and I'm going to go away right now. They can't say that. They don't know that. We don't have that ability. And even some adults still have trouble with that ability to say that.
I know.
So they're going off of your energy, and you as the parent, you as the guardian, you as the one in charge, they're feeding off of your energy.
Mm-hmm.
So to really show up with, I'm going to do my best. We're going to smile. We're going to be playful. We're going to be curious. We're going to try tons of different things. And we're just going to do the best that we can. Your child feels that, and it makes a massive difference. And that really is that emotional state control that lets us suspend that ego that says, again, there's no shame, there's no guilt. I don't need to carry this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I can put it down over here and I can pick this up, and I can walk with love, and I can walk with intention, and I can walk with, I'm going to be really curious, and I'm going to go to professionals, and I'm going to go to groups, and I'm going to say, I don't know. Do you have a question? Can you help me answer this question? When we get curious, we get so much more expansive, so much more creative in what is possible for that individual.
Yes. And I've experienced that with my son, Drayson, too, just entering that state of curiosity. And I one thing that I realized early on was that he picks up on my vibes, right? And because he couldn't speak at the time, I remember thinking that was a way for him to sense me, to sense my connection with him. So shifting that, from a state of, I didn't want him to feel my shame and guilt. I didn't want to instill that on him. And that was something that was, like you said, one day at a time. It was really, really difficult for me at first. But once I started to see that he shifted too, and because I was shifting, I started to notice a significant difference for sure. We often talk about the benefits of early intervention, but can you explain why early intervention is so crucial for children on the spectrum, particularly in terms of speech therapy?
For early intervention, I love early intervention. I think it's a phenomenal thing, and states are able to provide it. The reason it's so powerful and so helpful is because that little mind and body are growing and growing fast. Mm-hmm. We want to be in there. If something isn't developing normally, okay, no problem. How can we support this growth? How can we encourage language? How can we encourage speech? How can we encourage communication? Mm-hmm. The earlier that we're in, the better that individual and that family has support. And that is truly critical, because even the reason it's, among so many reasons, I have like 14 things I want to say, but I'll try and really just narrow it down. If there's a delay in time, so let's say you're worried about your 2-year-old, they just turned 2.
Right.
And we're having a delay in time that says, okay, well, we can't get you in for an evaluation at 6 months, or we can't get you in for 8 months. You are
Right.
now missing a 6 to
Yes.
8 month gap of time.
Oh, yeah. It took
And
me almost a
the,
year to get services for
oh yeah,
Grayson.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. And the most important thing to understand is that mind and body do not stop growing
Right.
because they couldn't get an evaluation, because they couldn't get in front of somebody. When we can be curious, when we can really open up and say, hey, is early intervention available? Okay, I'm on a wait list for 6 months. No problem. What is another option while I wait for this time frame? And even with better speech, I absolutely have a 2-year-old on my caseload and helping that parent understand this is where we are, this is where we want to go. Here's how to integrate it in home. Here's how to integrate it, and let's record the session so that we can show it to grandparents, we can show it to babysitters, so that everybody's doing the same thing across the board, ultimately helping that individual. So even if services aren't able to be achieved at early intervention right when you want them to, look for other options in addition to that. Also being just really open and curious of how the parent and the guardian can educate themselves.
Yes.
And go online, look at YouTube videos as in from professionals. Look at speech therapy. We have a ton on our YouTube channel. How can I support my child improve their speech? My child's not talking. What are some solutions from a speech therapist? Go to the professionals. And the reason I say look at professionals is because you want to be careful of what you're absorbing.
Right.
Do not go on message boards that appear to be, this didn't work, that didn't work.
Right.
No, you do not. You're not looking for that. This helped. This helped. This helped. Try this, try that. That's what you're looking for. And that's the difference that will make the difference.
Right. Because it's easy to get stuck in that filter. I know I have. There's certain groups that I've left just completely because of the negative connotation alone. Like
Completely.
I'm like, I can't, like it's weighing me down. I can't do it. So I think that you bring up I love how you just said, like, look for this specific stuff. Look for them saying that this is what worked. This is what, instead of this didn't work, or, this therapist didn't do anything. I hear a lot, you hear the criticisms, and it's like, well, it's not necessarily, that person's fault either. And so I got to a point where I really had to filter out some of that information myself, absolutely.
I love that you shared that.
Yeah.
And this is something I share with as many caregivers and guardians as I possibly can, if you don't have a great connection, or if your child does not have a great connection with your clinician, whether it's an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a speech therapist, it's not necessarily the clinician. It simply is the connection.
Right.
Always be open to the idea of, okay, I'm going to stick with this clinician and I'm going to look for another one.
Right.
Because what you're doing is you not only, especially if you've been with a clinician for 4 or 5 years, and you're noticing that there is some stagnation, that the child isn't getting stronger. I encourage people to evaluate, look at what's going on, and don't think just like 1 or 2 bad sessions, I need to get rid of my clinician type thing. Really be the observer of how your child's skills are growing. And if you're noticing, something just doesn't feel off, right? They just really seem to struggle together. It's okay.
Right.
Let's keep looking for another clinician. Let's look for another approach. Let's look for something else. It's not saying speech therapy doesn't work or that clinician is terrible. It's simply a connection, and things work. We need to work with the things that do work and be open to the flexibility. If I've worked with somebody for 5 years, I know that individual really well. That being said, I'm also working to stay up on my skill set, up on my game. What is another set of eyes looking at that I might not see? New clinicians that are coming out of school, they have a completely different perspective. And that's a great thing. It's another set of eyes that are going, have you tried this? Have you tried that? What else can we do? Ultimately, we want that individual to feel like they're communicating effectively. Yeah. We want that family to feel supported. Those are the most important things.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And I appreciate you so much saying that to our listeners today, because that's something that I always say too, is that it's just a constant revolving door, in terms of therapies and what we provide for Drayson in home and out of home on his therapies. And we've had to pivot and switch just to keep it fresh and to keep that exposure there. But the connection, I always tell people, trust your gut, watch and see how that connection is. So I love that. Lenora, thank you so much for joining us today. For our listeners who want to learn more about Better Speech or get in touch with Lenora, I will post everything in the show notes for the information, but you can also go to betterspeech.com as well to learn more about this fabulous organization. And again, Lenora, I always love talking with you, speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time and energy today. I greatly appreciate you.
Thank you so much for spending time with me. I adore spending time with you. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. This concludes our episode for today. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you would like to hear about, please feel free to send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram if you haven't already, or feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word to others so we can help encourage our community and grow strong. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, keep working on your puzzle, and remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.